Hi, once again, here we are. You've got it, NYthespirit.com video channel. And what a guy we're going to talk to today. You might know him, as a matter of fact, just because you might know him. Please welcome PaulMyers. Hi, Paul.
Hey, David.
How are you?
I'm good. Nice to be with David Marsden.
Is it? I've always wanted to be with David Marsden. That's just one of those things. I get into bed at night and I go, wow, I wish I could be with David Marsden. And then I realize I am.
You are.
The first time I ever met you was a number of years back. You contacted me because you were writing a book about Long John Baldry.
Yes.
And he and I hung out a bit when I lived in Vancouver.
That's right.
So I said, yes, let's talk. Tell me about, how was that? Was it exciting to do the book? Was it a long process?
Well, the thing about Baldry was I'd always known about him, and actually, CFNY you guys used to play "A Thrill's a Thrill," which was a later period Baldry song, and we knew, and I'd also heard some of his earlier stuff. "Don't Try to Lay No Boogie Woogie on the King of Rock," Boogie Woogie, yes, and I so knew something about him as an eccentric British person. But I lived in Vancouver around this time, and he had just passed away.
Yeah.
And a publisher there said, "Hey, Paul, do you want to write a book about this guy?" And I said, "Well, I don't know if I have a whole book." But then I remembered he discovered Elton John. Yeah. He gave Rod Stewart his first start. The song "Someone Saved My Life Tonight" was sort of about something that happened with John Baldry. So I thought, well, if I can write a story about the entire British blues and sort of give this unsung, because people didn't know how much Baldry had influenced the world of the R&B from England. And so it was exciting. So yeah, and then to find people like yourself who came forth and told me stories about it, it was a very cool sort of dig through the records and found all these cool things. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
John was first known, of course, obviously in the UK because he had a monster pop hit there, as opposed to doing the blues, which he got into later. In the process, did you talk to people in England as well as Canada?
Yeah, I went to London and I talked to his sister, Baldry's sister, Margaret, and she told me a lot of stuff about the early days in London. Now, the thing is, he was into the blues at the beginning, and formatively, like he created a lot of the blues. He brought Muddy Waters to London. So I talked to a lot of people in Twickenham, the Eel Pie Island music scene. I talked to people who ran the Eel Pie Island dance hall that he started at with. Ronnie Wood was in his band at the time. I didn't get to talk to Ronnie, but I did talk to Ian McLagan. And, he was great. And Ian McLagan, and also several of the people from Brian Auger, Julie Driscoll. They all talked to me about Baldry, so that was pretty good. And Rod talked to me, which was great. Rod was on the phone, though, from Palm Beach. And I'll never forget, he said, "I look out on my huge palatial estate and I say to myself, without Baldry, none of this would have happened. Thank you, John." So he said that to me, which is that, and Elton John said much the same thing, like that if he hadn't met John Baldry, he wouldn't have been called Elton John, because that's where he got his name. So it was really great to sort of talk to all these people in England and in some people in New York, Toronto, Vancouver. He had a lot of friends,
My understanding is that he discovered Rod Stewart in a train station.
Yes.
Busking on an acoustic guitar.
He was actually playing harmonica on a Twickenham railway station platform.
Oh, harmonica.
Yeah, and he played really authentic blues harmonica. Yeah. And John Baldry was on the other platform and said, "Dear boy," because that's how he talked. "Dear boy, we need somebody. Cyril Davies has just died, and we need somebody to play harmonica." And so, and of course, Rod said sure, and then he became co-lead singer for a while because he was singing his own tunes. He could sing like Sam Cooke, and then they would do covers, and then when they started this band called Steam Packet, it was Julie Driscoll and Brian Auger with Rod Stewart and John Baldry. So and they were going to be huge, but they had 4 different managers, so they couldn't decide on a business plan. Talk about a band ruined by management,
The one thing part of the story that I really admire. And I don't actually know if it's true, but I think it is that in John's last couple of years, his health was fierce.
Yes.
I had moved from Vancouver by then, but even when I lived in Vancouver, he was having health problems that were enormous.
He had gout and stuff.
Yeah, and my understanding is that Rod Stewart provided any monies that were needed to keep John healthy and alive.
Yeah, I think his last hospital stay, I haven't, Rod wouldn't confirm this because I think Rod was, you don't want to claim it, but I think Rod put him in the hospital, like made sure he had the best care, and I don't know what else his final arrangements, but I'm pretty sure a lot of that was Rod. Rod did look at him as a good friend, but also as kind of a mentor, And Rod, every day of Rod's life, he actually remembers that John Baldry gave him his start, and that's pretty nice.
I think that I love the compassion that brings to the story.
Yes.
I love the passion that you bring to the story.
Well, that's something I love music, and I love hearing what I call the forensic breakdown of how this music influenced that music, like listening to radio in Toronto, for instance, for me, growing up with CFNY and your other work and stuff like that for you, not to put you on the spot, but other things like that taught me how to listen to music, and then this band formed because of that thing, and the British invasion got to Canada and American New York music, and I love breaking that stuff down. So I do have a lot of passion for that, and there's people behind those stories,
So do you enjoy the research part of it?
I do. The interviews, doing all the interviews and meeting the people.
Writing a book is a huge, monumental task that requires unbelievable self-discipline.
It does, actually, yeah, and scheduling.
How do you do that?
Well, I have a lot of friends who help me, but I think I'm also kind of, I think like a hound who's hunting, a bloodhound. I go, oh, I need to talk to that guy, and he's going to tell me, I always want somebody who was there to tell me, and how a criminologist will go, get me inside the scene of the crime. So who was there? Who could witness it? Like who puts in a timeline here? So you talk to the guy who ran the bar where Baldry went, or in the case of the book I wrote about Todd Rundgren, I wrote a book called A Wizard, a True Star, Todd Rundgren in the studio. He produced all these artists like the New York Dolls, Patti Smith, XTC, The Pursuit of Happiness from Toronto. And I went around looking for all those people to tell me what it was like working with Todd Rundgren. And then I asked Todd Rundgren to tell me what it was like producing all those guys. And I had all these files of interviews. And some of the stories, strangely enough, matched up. Because people remember, that's the thing about memories, right? People have a different personal take on it. So you always have to be the third person going, okay, so that's probably not true. Like Grand Funk Railroad remembered Todd Rundgren throwing a cake at them. But he doesn't remember that, and nobody else seems to remember that, but Grand Funk Railroad remember that,
You got that close to Todd Rundgren.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. Let's go behind the scenes.
Well, the coolest thing about Todd Rundgren is that I think nobody had been asking for his legacy story. And I was a huge fan ever since, oh my God, Something Anything and Hermit of Mink Hollow, and I knew a lot in Utopia, and I knew a lot of that stuff. And so I just contacted the management. He'd met me once or twice before, just as another guy he knows. And I said, I've got a book ready to go if you'll participate. I won't do it if you won't participate. I won't write about you. I want to write with you. So he said, sure, come over to Hawaii where I live. If you get yourself over there, I have a guest room you can stay in. So already that's taken care of. He picks me up at the airport in a pickup truck. I didn't expect that. He said, I'll send a car out. And I didn't realize he'd be in the car. He drove it. And so, we drive out and we hang out for like 5 days straight talking about his career. And, sitting by the patio and, listening to chickens in Hawaii in the background, And it's like, it was great. And over the course of that, and, he was at one point very nervous because he didn't know what I was going to write. And then he saw the book and he saw that I went and talked to Patti Smith in New York City, one-on-one with Patti Smith telling me about Todd Rundgren. Like, these are, for me, goosebumps, to actually have the humans that behind all that telling me directly, not researching it, actually getting it from them. So Todd likes the book so much that now he treats me like, oh, you know me. In fact, he just said to me, I don't know if you're supposed to convey these kinds of compliments I got, but the nicest thing I ever heard was he said, if I write my own life story, I want you to help me because you know me better than me,
I know that you and Todd have become somewhat like friends.
Yeah, I'd say we're friends.
What is he doing now?
Oh, he's doing a lot of things. Like this year, what I like about Todd is sort of like Neil Young in a weird way. He doesn't stay in one area you think he's going to be in. So he'll do a rock tour of like old rock songs that he's been in, and his fans will love that. Then he'll do an electronica thing. Like he just did this year an EDM album, very much beats per minute, but really has the same Todd sensibility of melodic nature and powerful lyrics, but it's all electronic. So some of his rock fans are like, "What the hell's going on?" But another generation of fans goes, oh wow, so he's not just an old rock star, he can make modern music. And then he goes and does this album in Scandinavia with two young guys who grew up listening to his records, and they're really young, and they go, Todd, will you come play with us? And so he'll go and do that. And he does a concert in Amsterdam with a symphony orchestra, and he's very busy. He doesn't produce other people as much as he used to. In fact, the last thing he did was a New York Dolls reunion album a few years ago. But he will produce his own stuff, and he's out there playing, and he's got he tours with Ringo Starr. He plays in Ringo's band, and now it's just for fun. In the old days, it was Ringo demands you play, yeah. And now it's like, oh, Ringo and I are going to be playing together. So for him, that's his little thing of he grew up listening to the Beatles, and now he's in Ringo's band. So.
You're a big Beatles fan.
Huge Beatles fan. Well, it's genetic. My parents are both from Liverpool.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, both my parents from Liverpool, and so when I first heard the Beatles in my house as a kid, with my two brothers, we were kind of encouraged to listen to the Beatles, and then later other generations of Liverpool music affected me, like Echo and the Bunnymen, but it always felt like Liverpool was very genetically where I'm from. So the Beatles are huge in my songwriting and in my, understanding of pop.
And you're posting on Facebook.
I'm very into the Beatles. I mean, some of the best concerts I've ever seen were the last two Paul McCartney shows I ever saw.
What is it about the Beatles who 40 years, 50 years after the fact, you're still excited by them?
I can actually break some of it down, some of it's intangible, right? But I can break some of it down and say that they really put a lot of effort into writing original melodies and original chord shapes and stuff like that, and then lyrics that had some kind of enduring quality, and they had a sense of euphoria in their music, and then when they were serious, like Helter Skelter, they really went for that too. There was a looseness to them, but at the same time a constructed element, like with George Martin. So all those things, and so eclectic. There's a Beatles song for every emotion, and I don't diss the Stones, by the way, because but the Stones had the Stones have a perfect thing that they built, and it's really perfect also. But the Beatles had this eclectic thing, which is why Stones purists sometimes say the Beatles are too pop, because they're not one thing. But I guess I grew up with the many things. I like the buffet.
So the love for the Beatles, is it coincidence that your music flies under the name of John and Paul?
Funny thing is, it actually is a coincidence. And actually, I play music in San Francisco right now with a guy named John Mormon, who's not a Mormon, but his name is John Mormon. Yeah. And John Mormon and I both have the same kind of DNA of he likes a few more different things than I like, but I like Joni Mitchell more than he likes Joni Mitchell, that sort of thing. But we meet in this little Venn diagram, and we started writing songs together, and we were going to just call it, Paul and John, because that's our names. And we didn't even think of the Beatle thing. And then we decided to call it The Paul and John as a kind of a fun, because we play all the instruments on the record. So we made a band called The Paul and John, but it's just me and him. He plays the drums as well as plays guitar. I play guitar and I play bass. We both sing. So we just call it The Paul and John, and everybody asks, is it a tribute to Paul and John? And it isn't.
Now, over at NYthespirit.com, we are playing You Sent Me a Lot of Music several years back. Yeah. It's time for some more.
Okay.
Are you going to make some more?
Well, here's what I'm doing. I have 3 things that are in development right now musically. One is this electronica thing that I've been doing for years now, collecting these little tracks that I make, kind of ambient, kind of electronic. They're not dance music, but they're just, blips and bloops. And I really love these things. They're very Eno inspired, and I call that flam, F-L-A-M exclamation mark, like a flam on a drum. Yes, yeah. And so Flam has a record almost ready to go. I'm just I'm just compiling the best of 10 years of these things. And then I have a singer-songwriter album that I'm probably going to just credit myself as Paul Matthew Myers, which is my real name, my full name. And then John and I are writing another Paul and John album. And we just did a gig, a live gig. We do sporadic live shows. We opened for a band called Pugwash from Ireland, who are really good. And we've got a lot of friends like that. And we have a good, the people who like our record are very nice, and they really like our record. So we feel like we don't know where the audience on a large scale is, but maybe that doesn't matter. We just make the records that we love. We craft it as much as we can and make it the way we always want to hear it. And it stands there, and if you find it 10 years from now, it's still going to be, like the Gravelberries record is, God, how old is that record? 92, I think it came out, 93. People still tell me they hear this record, they go, I didn't know you had that record out in the 90s. And they go, it's really good. How come I never heard of it? And I'm saying that they say that. You're not supposed to convey compliments. But when somebody says something like that to me, I always go, isn't that amazing that I put so much love into it that it didn't matter if it was a hit record, but it will connect with people, you know? I think that's how it should be, right?
Oh, absolutely. You have to love what you're doing.
Yeah.
That will show in whatever it is you do.
Yeah, yeah.
And ultimately, folks pick up on that.
Well, you mentioned passion earlier, and years ago I was like a troubled person, and I had a therapist suggest, I said, what should I be doing with my life? And he said, you should just be putting passion into everything. Mm-hmm. And he was a really nice man, and he just said, he was a Southerner, and I'll never forget, he said, you should be putting passion into everything. So now I hear the word patient, like P-A-Y-S-H-U-N.
Right next to the grits.
Yeah, patient, you know. And of course, Graham Parker has that great song, Passion is No Ordinary Word. Yeah. And I actually think when I hear the word passion, when somebody tells me they have a passion for this thing or they put passion into it, that is the driving engine in a lot of great things that we resonate with. Like humans feel passion, right? And compassion.
I absolutely agree.
Compassion and passion together.
I know one of the other famous books that you wrote was Bare Naked Ladies story.
Well, yeah, and that got me started as a book author.
That was your first one.
Yeah, because I'd been writing magazine periodical articles, you know, stuff like that. And the Bare Naked Ladies grew up with the Gravelberries at the same scene. Like, I think they opened for us one week, and then a month later we were opening for them. Kind of like one of those things where we watched their elevator go up past us. But because we're friends, there was never a feeling of like, we were just really happy for them.
Yes.
And we were just really happy for them. And then they remembered that I'd become a journalist as well. And they said, hey, you're the guy who should write our story 10 years after, you know. So, and then I had this book out, and it got published in the States as well, which is great. And that kind of gave me the confidence to know, wow, I can write a whole book, you know? And because, yeah, it is a hurdle when you first don't know that you can write a book.
You grew up in Scarborough.
That's right. I grew up in North York and then Scarborough. Like, we moved to Scarborough in our formative years, yeah.
What was that like? Give me a quick story.
Well, I grew up originally in North York near Fairview Mall at a place where Don Mills Road becomes a peanut shaped, so they call it the Peanut.
I know.
And the older kids in the neighborhood were Rush, you know? And so when we think about who made it from here, we go, Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson are from here. You know, Neil wasn't from there, but and it was like we would look up to those guys, and it was kind of like every band I was in when I was really young wanted to be like, you know, as big as Rush. Yeah. And then I moved to Scarborough a little bit later, just the other side of the tracks, and it was isolated. It was very much about coming downtown as much as you could on the subway or on the bus, actually, in those days. And then you take the bus to the Young subway, and then you go down to Sam the Record Man and hang out at Young Street. And then when we got a car, we'd be driving in on the Don Valley Parkway listening to CFNY, and it was just like, you know what I mean? It was definitely those, you know, Johnny's Hamburgers was a big hamburger stand up in Victoria Park. And so that's all I remember about youth, was just striving to hear sounds from around the world and trying to figure out where the world was.
And now you live in the beautiful city of San Francisco.
I love where I live, and I love where I'm from. Actually, it's a very good time to be talking to me, because I have a weird equilibrium right now about the continuum of my life. I sort of feel like all the places I love are all still here, and I'm here. I go to London a lot, go to New York a lot, and it's great to be a citizen right now of the world. You know, like.
I'm happy. For you, I'm happy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Don't forget don't forget his books, his music, and don't we look like twins?
Totally. Right? It's the hair and the glasses, right?
77 in the punk rock summer, I was just another